questions. I think they're going to have quite different answers. The first one is, did anyone else see Nick Cave at the arena last night? You did?
I did.
Oh my God. Wasn't it amazing?
It was.
It was amazing. Okay, that's a little tingle. I wasn't expecting a yes. Second question, how many people went to the march on Sunday? That's not bad, not bad. And I should imagine there were friends and family and colleagues that went with you as well. So thank you for all those that did. And the reason why we did it was to make sure the government across the UK listens to the problems that we would like them to address. As Giles eloquently put it, to end pollution for profit, to reform the regulators, and to make sure the laws are enforced. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that with you today. My grandfather farmed at Narberth on the Cleddau catchment, and he wouldn't recognise the situation now, particularly from a water quality and wildlife perspective. Just today, the wonderful team from the Cleddau Partnership have announced on BBC Wales that, and excuse me for mentioning Dick Cymru particularly in this situation, but 58,000 cubic metres of untreated sewage was released last year, and even when it was alerted, Natural Resources Wales downgraded it to low, as in risk and issues to the river, and then it took over 9 months to fix the problem as a pumping issue. That happens everywhere in Britain, whether you have a privatised, nationalised, or a not-for-profit model. So what's the commonality here? Regulation. And, of course, incentives. And we'll come to both of these things. So if we think about the way that we value our water and what matters to us, I think it was put very beautifully by Johnny Flynn on stage on Sunday in his wonderful folk tune, which starts, "All that I need is a river." And then a few moments later, "The water sustains me without even trying." I cannot overestimate the very obvious thing that water sustains all life. Everything that we have, I'm being mobbed by a fly, excuse me, they agree or not, I'm not quite sure, probably agree. Everything in our economy requires it. To have food, we need clean rivers. We need abundant fresh water. To have hospitals that function, schools and so on. Industry. Just now, the Water Commission that Andy mentioned earlier on, that's been announced by Steve Reed, the Secretary of Environment, mentions economic growth as its primary objective. Rivers do not need economic growth, they enable economic growth. There is a fundamental clash here, and when I go tomorrow with Giles to have a word as one of 10 CEOs, this is quite fun. Obviously I didn't wash enough this morning, I'm sorry. I'll just go home now. So we're one of 10 CEOs, including the water industry, the National Farmers Union, the CLA, the Landowners Association, and a few NGOs to have a little chat with Steve Reed and to see whether we can press upon him this decoupling of growth and water quality change and try and get the latter first. I'm an archaeologist and I'm an ecologist, and I study dead things and living things. And when I think back to when we settled in this wonderful isle as farmers, which is roughly 7,000 years ago, I've been able to, as many other archaeologists have been able to use rivers as a way of tracking our relationship to nature and waste. You know, archaeologists study waste effectively. Not surprisingly, running River Action now is something that was a natural progression in my career, specialising in poo. Now, we used to look, in archaeological terms, at bones, pipes, pottery and so on. But now we look through the lens of microbes and the absence of life. Now, whilst it is fantastic that since the Industrial Revolution and the clean-up since, in Wales we have seen a rapid reduction in, for example, mining trailings and so on have diminished. There's still a lot of chemicals in the water, and in the southern valleys and so on, as I'm sure many will be very familiar, that is still a major risk to health for wildlife and humans. But when we look at the situation affecting wildlife, we've got to look at both sewage and agriculture. Now, I mentioned my grandfather. The last thing he would do, or I as his grandson would want to do, is blame farmers. Let's be clear. When Andy and I and other members of the steering group decided to help you set this up, we made it absolutely clear this is not about blame. We have to recognise the challenges of where they come from. And in the case of farming, I can understand. I don't agree with it, but I can understand why you as a farmer might be fed up of your 100 acres and really struggling for a living because your farm gate prices are frankly ridiculous. Why intermediaries like Avara, who I mentioned earlier, and early in the supermarkets like Tesco's are taking all the money. 1p in the pound of profits comes to farmers. That is wrong. That is wrong. And excuse me for being momentarily angry. I promised to be well behaved, but we must look after our farmers. They are us. They are our community. They are in the heart of it all. So we use the term IPU, intensive poultry unit. Let's use the real term, factory farm. It is a factory farm. Take even the word farm out. It's a factory for animals. And over the time that it lives, those chickens live of 5 weeks only, the amount of manure that is generated, everything's against me, this is so funny. Come on. I need an extra couple of minutes for the disturbances. Oh, dear. So those birds that live a short life in hell, frankly, to satisfy us, we're being told that it's to match demand. It is not true. It is an international business model that has convinced us we all need to eat chicken every day, quite often in many families more than once a day. We do not. 70% of our farmland in this country across the whole of Britain, if you average it, is for meat and dairy protein, animal protein. 70%, but only 32% of our calories come from those sources. That's out of balance. We need food security in Wales and across Britain. There was a plan, as mentioned earlier. Where is that food strategy? We currently rely on about 75% of our fruit and veg from abroad. Do you think, having seen Spain literally flattened by floods and storms, do you think Almeria, where all our veg comes from, is going to be sending fruit and veg to us when they run out? I don't think so. So, of course, I'm not suggesting that Wales should suddenly become a giant orchard or a small vegetable farm. I appreciate the geology and the differences in soil makeup and so on across Britain. But if we have a national strategy, we can grow the right food in the right place. And I would like to suggest that, yes, turning IPUs into mushroom farms would be a much better use than using them for IPUs, for chickens. So, when we think about the next steps in the future, what do we need to do? How can we try and bring together all of these things so that we can actually back a sustainable future for us and our rivers and our farmers, and dare I say it, water companies and their executives and employees become heroes, not villains? Wouldn't that be a wonderful world? Imagine being able to celebrate a government nationally and locally and regionally that actually did its job. So ultimately, in my mind, and River Actions, this comes down to, dare I mention it, coin, as you called it earlier, Andy. Money, unfortunately, is where we are. It drives everything. And until we have Rachel Reeves in Whitehall and Westminster and the equivalent in Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, we need to make sure that rivers and river health are put at the top of the agenda politically. Literally everything in our economy requires them to be healthy. Look back at the general election that's just happened. If we look at the why, there were 5 blues. They have now changed to 1 blue. And that 1 blue on his 3 tickets was rivers. The other 4 newly elected MPs have all put rivers and water quality on the top of their agendas. So I'd like to leave this thought with you. The Senate election's coming very soon. Will you vote for healthy rivers? Thank you.